My mom thinks she's entitled to my new apartment. My mother invaded my one-bedroom apartment every weekend for months, using my bed, monopolizing my bathroom for hours, and stealing my autistic son's medical supplies. When I finally confronted her about destroying our peace, she tried to hit me and screamed that she already knew she was hurting us but didn't care. What happened next changed everything between us forever. I never thought I'd be writing this story, but here I am at 3 in the morning, sitting in my kitchen while my 8-year-old son sleeps peacefully for the first time in months. My name is Juniper, I'm 29 years old, and I'm a single mother trying to build a safe space for my special needs child. What I didn't expect was that my biggest threat would come from the woman who raised me. Let me take you back to when things were different. Growing up, my mother Beatrice was everything to me. She worked 2 jobs to keep food on our table after my father left when I was 12. She'd come home exhausted, but she'd still help me with homework and listen to my problems. When I got pregnant with my son Kai at 21, she was the first person I called, terrified and crying in a hospital bathroom. "Honey, we'll figure this out together," she said over the phone that day. That's what family does. And for years, that's exactly what we did. When Kai was diagnosed with autism at age 4, she was there learning about sensory processing disorders and communication techniques. She'd babysit so I could work my 2 part-time jobs, and she never complained when he had meltdowns or needed his specific routines. Those were good years, even though they were hard. I thought we were building something strong together. Beatrice lived about 2 hours away in a small town where she'd settled after her divorce from my stepfather. She'd visit once a month, always calling ahead, always bringing something for Kai. She respected our space and our routines. When I finally saved enough money last year to move out of my tiny studio and into a 1-bedroom apartment, she was so proud. "Look at you, building a real home for that boy," she said, helping me unpack boxes. "You're doing something I never could do alone." I should have known things were too good to last. The change started 6 months ago when my mother reconnected with Douglas, my middle sister Fiona's biological father. This was the same man who had abandoned my mother when she was 7 months pregnant, leaving her to raise Fiona alone while I watched my baby sister cry for a daddy who never came home. Douglas had been a ghost story in our family for 15 years, the man whose name we didn't mention because it made my mother's face go dark. But suddenly, he was back. Living in the city now, divorced from his second wife, apparently ready to make things right. My mother, who I thought was stronger than this, fell right back into his orbit like no time had passed at all. "He's changed, Juniper," she told me over the phone. "He wants to be a grandfather to Fiona's kids now. He's trying to make amends." I wanted to support her. I really did. But I also remembered the night she cried herself to sleep when I was 14, whispering Fiona's name and wondering if she'd done something wrong to make him leave. I remembered how she worked herself to exhaustion because she refused to ask anyone for help, especially him. The first warning sign came on a Friday evening in March. I was making dinner for Kai when I heard keys in my door. I'd given my mother a spare key for emergencies, but she'd never used it without calling first. "Mom?" I called out, confused. She walked in carrying an overnight bag and what looked like a garment bag. "Hi honey, I'm just going to get ready here before I meet Douglas. Traffic was terrible, and I don't want to be late." Kai looked up from his tablet, immediately uncomfortable with the unexpected change in routine. Friday nights were our quiet time together, when we'd watch his favorite show and eat pizza. He started stimmying with his hands, a sign that he was feeling overwhelmed. "Mom, you could have called," I said, trying to keep my voice calm for Kai's sake. "We weren't expecting company tonight." "Oh, it's fine," she said, already heading toward my bedroom. "I'll just be a few hours. Douglas is taking me to that new steakhouse downtown." She disappeared into my room, and I heard the shower start running. Kai's stimming got more intense, and I had to spend 20 minutes helping him regulate before he could eat his dinner. By the time my mother emerged, dressed to the nines and smelling like my expensive perfume, Kai was finally calm again. "Don't wait up," she said, kissing my cheek. "I might be late." She left me there, confused and slightly annoyed, but I told myself it was just once. She was excited about seeing Douglas again, and maybe she just wasn't thinking clearly. I could handle one disrupted evening. But it wasn't just once. The next Friday, she showed up again. This time, she didn't even pretend it was spontaneous. "I'll need to shower and change here again," she announced, walking past me into the apartment. "Douglas and I are going to see a show." This time, Kai had a complete meltdown. The unexpected change, the noise from the shower, and the disruption to his routine triggered a sensory overload that took me 2 hours to help him through. He was crying and hitting himself, something he only did when he was completely overwhelmed. "Mom, this isn't working," I said when she finally came out of the bathroom. Kai needs his routines, and these surprise visits are really hard on him. She looked at Kai, who was still rocking in the corner with his headphones on, and shrugged. He'll adjust. Kids are resilient. That phrase would haunt me for months. He'll adjust. As if my son's autism was just stubbornness that could be trained away with enough disruption. By April, the Friday invasions had become a pattern. My mother would arrive around 4 o'clock, monopolize our only bathroom for 2 hours while she got ready, use my bed to lay out her clothes, and leave Kai and me to cope with the chaos. She'd return on Sunday evening, exhausted and often drunk, expecting to crash in my bed while I slept on the couch. "Where else am I going to sleep?" she'd say when I suggested maybe she should get a hotel room. "I'm your mother. This is what family does." But it wasn't what family did. It was what entitled people did when they thought they had the right to take whatever they wanted. The bathroom situation became unbearable. Our apartment only had one bathroom, and my mother would lock herself in there for hours. She'd do her hair, her makeup, her nails, taking long baths while Kai waited outside, sometimes having accidents because he couldn't hold it anymore. "Grandma's using the potty," he'd say, dancing from foot to foot. "Grandma's taking too long." I'd have to take him outside to use the bathroom at the gas station down the street, a humiliating experience for both of us. When I tried to talk to my mother about it, she acted like I was being unreasonable. "I'm getting ready for an important date," she'd say. "Surely you can plan around that." Plan around it? In my own home? With my special needs child? The laundry situation was even worse. She'd bring bags of dirty clothes and take over my small washer and dryer for the entire weekend. I'd come home from work to find my wet clothes pulled out of the machine and dumped in a basket so she could wash her things first. "Your clothes weren't done anyway," she'd say when I protested. "I'm just being efficient." But the worst part was what she did to Kai's supplies. My son has a gastrointestinal condition that requires special wipes for cleaning. They're expensive, and I budget carefully to make sure we always have enough. My mother started using them like regular tissues, going through entire packages in a single weekend. "Mom, those are Kai's medical supplies," I said, finding an empty package in the trash. "He needs those." "They're just wipes," she replied. "What's the big deal?" "The big deal is that they cost $40 a package, and I have to special order them. When you use them all up, Kai doesn't have what he needs." She rolled her eyes. "You're being dramatic. He's fine." But he wasn't fine. None of us were fine. The breaking point came in June. My mother arrived on a Friday as usual, but this time she seemed particularly agitated. She'd been fighting with Douglas about something, and she was taking it out on everyone around her. She locked herself in the bathroom for 3 hours, running the water constantly. When she finally emerged, the small apartment was filled with humidity and the overwhelming smell of her various beauty products. Kai was having trouble breathing, his asthma triggered by the heavy scents. "Mom, can you please open the windows?" I asked, helping Kai with his inhaler. "The air is too thick in here." "Don't be ridiculous," she said. "It smells fine to me." But it didn't smell fine. It smelled like a perfume store had exploded, and Kai was wheezing. I had to take him outside until the air cleared, and by the time we came back in, my mother was gone for her date. Sunday evening, she returned drunk and belligerent. She stumbled through the door at midnight, waking Kai up from a deep sleep. He started crying, confused and scared by the noise and commotion. "Why is he being so fussy?" she slurred, annoyed that her grandson was having a perfectly normal reaction to being startled awake. "He's not being fussy, Mom. He's 8 years old, and you woke him up. He has school tomorrow." "Well, tell him to be quiet. I have a headache." I spent an hour getting Kai back to sleep while my mother crashed in my bed without even changing out of her going-out clothes. The next morning, she was hungover and cruel. "This place is depressing," she said, looking around my carefully decorated apartment. "No wonder you're always so miserable. And when's the last time you did something with your hair? You look like you've given up on life." I was dealing with insomnia, depression, ADHD, and severe anemia at the time. I was working 2 jobs while caring for a special needs child, and I was barely keeping my head above water. The last thing I needed was criticism from the person who was supposed to support me. "I'm doing my best, Mom," I said quietly. "Well, your best isn't very good, is it?" That comment hit me like a physical blow. Here I was, struggling to provide for my child, working myself to exhaustion, and the woman who raised me thought my best wasn't good enough. The pattern continued through the summer. Every weekend was the same nightmare, my mother treating my apartment like her personal hotel, using up our resources, disrupting Kai's routines, and making cruel comments about my life and appearance. She'd criticize my housekeeping while leaving messes everywhere, complain about my cooking while eating my food, and mock my parenting while ignoring Kai's needs. In July, she crossed a line I didn't even know existed. I came home from work to find her in the bathroom with the door wide open, using the toilet while talking loudly on the phone with Douglas. The smell was overwhelming in our small, closed apartment, and she was laughing about it. "Douglas, you should smell this place right now," she was saying into the phone. "I think I might have killed something in here." Kai was sitting in the living room with his hands over his nose, trying not to gag. I was mortified and furious. "Mom, close the door," I said firmly. "Oh, relax," she called back. "It's nothing you haven't smelled before." But it wasn't about what I'd smelled before. It was about respect, about basic human decency, about consideration for the people who were letting her stay in their home. It was about my 8-year-old son having to breathe that air in his own living space. When I tried to bring it up later, she acted like I was being prudish and ridiculous. "You're too uptight," she said. "That's why you don't have a man. No one wants to deal with someone who complains about everything." I realized then that my mother saw me as a failure. In her mind, I was a single mother living in a small apartment, struggling financially, without a romantic relationship. She thought I was pathetic, and she felt entitled to treat me that way because she believed I had no other options. But she was wrong. The final straw came in August. I had reached my breaking point, and I decided to have one last conversation with her before cutting off access to my apartment entirely. I made a list of every issue, every boundary she'd crossed, every way she'd made our lives harder instead of easier. I waited until Kai was at his father's house for the weekend, so we could talk without him having to witness any conflict. When my mother arrived that Friday, I was ready. "Mom, we need to talk," I said, gesturing for her to sit down in the living room. "Can it wait? I need to get ready, and Douglas is picking me up at 7. "No, it can't wait. We need to talk about these weekend visits. They're not working anymore." She sighed dramatically, like I was inconveniencing her with my own concerns about my own home. I started with the bathroom issue. "Mom, you can't monopolize our only bathroom for hours at a time. Kai has medical needs, and when you're in there for 3 hours, he sometimes has accidents because he can't wait. He needs to learn patience," she said dismissively. "He's 8 years old with autism and a gastrointestinal condition. He can't just learn to hold it for 3 hours." I moved on to the laundry. "And you can't keep pulling our wet clothes out of the washer to do your own laundry. It's disrespectful, and it's damaging our clothes. I'm just trying to be efficient with my time." "It's not your washer, Mom. It's mine. In my apartment. That I pay for." Then I brought up the medical supplies. "And you absolutely cannot keep using Kai's medical wipes. They're expensive, and they're specifically for his condition. When you use them all up, I have to choose between buying groceries and buying his medical supplies. You're being dramatic about some wipes. They're not just wipes. They're medical supplies that I have to special order, and they cost $40 a package. Would you use up someone's insulin because it was convenient?" I kept going through my list. The sleeping arrangements where she took my bed and expected me to sleep on the couch in my own home. The way she woke Kai up with her late-night returns. The cruel comments about my appearance and my life. The complete disregard for Kai's autism and his need for routine and predictability. "And Mom, you can't keep making comments about how I look or how I keep house. I'm dealing with multiple health conditions, I'm working 2 jobs, and I'm raising a special needs child alone. I don't need criticism from you on top of everything else." She sat there through my entire speech, her face getting more and more annoyed with each point I raised. When I finally finished, expecting some kind of apology or acknowledgement, she looked me dead in the eye and said the words that ended our relationship forever. I already knew. Not, "I'm sorry." Not, "I didn't realize." Not, "Let me try to do better." I already knew. She knew she was hurting us. She knew she was making our lives harder. She knew she was using up our resources and disrupting our peace. She knew she was crossing boundaries and violating our space. She knew all of it, and she had chosen to keep doing it anyway. I stared at her, speechless. In that moment, I realized that every weekend for months, she had been deliberately making our lives miserable. It wasn't thoughtlessness or inconsideration. It was intentional. "You knew?" I finally managed to say. "Of course I knew. You think I'm stupid? I knew you were getting upset about all this stuff. Then why did you keep doing it?" She shrugged. "Because I could. Because Douglas is in the city, and this is convenient for me. Because you're my daughter, and family helps family. Family helps family," I repeated slowly. "But this isn't helping, Mom. This is taking. This is using us." "Oh, please. You're being dramatic. You act like I'm some kind of monster for wanting to spend time with my grandson and use your shower." "Spending time with Kai? You ignore him the entire time you're here. You call his autism behaviors being bad, you use up his medical supplies, and you disrupt his routine so badly that it takes days for him to recover after you leave. She stood up then, her face flushed with anger. Don't you dare lecture me about that boy. I've done more for him than anyone else in this family. What have you done for him? You offered to babysit him and then started charging me money and demanding I provide food for short visits. You ignore everything I tell you about his needs. You make him anxious and uncomfortable in his own home. He's spoiled, she snapped. You've spoiled him with all this autism nonsense. In my day, kids just behaved. That was it. That was the moment I realized there was no coming back from this conversation. She had just called my son's medical condition nonsense, and blamed me for spoiling him with appropriate care. Get out, I said quietly. What? Get out of my apartment. Right now. She laughed, actually laughed. You can't kick me out. I'm your mother. I'm an adult, this is my home, and I'm telling you to leave. Now. I'm not going anywhere. I have plans with Douglas tonight. Then you can get ready at his place or in your car or at a hotel. You're not doing it here anymore. That's when she tried to hit me. She raised her hand and swung at my face, but I caught her wrist before she could make contact. Don't, I said, looking directly into her eyes. Don't you ever try to hit me in my own home. She jerked her hand away, grabbed her bags, and headed for the door. You'll regret this, she said. You need me more than I need you. No, Mom. I really don't. She slammed the door so hard that it rattled the walls, and then she was gone. I stood there in my suddenly quiet apartment, shaking with adrenaline and disbelief. Had that really just happened? Had my mother really just tried to hit me for setting boundaries in my own home? I called my sister Fiona that night to tell her what had happened. I expected some support, some validation that our mother had crossed serious lines. Instead, Fiona sighed like I was being difficult. June, you know how Mom is, she said. She doesn't mean anything by it. She's just excited about Douglas, and she's not thinking clearly. She tried to hit me, Fiona. In my own apartment. After months of treating Kai and me like garbage. She didn't actually hit you, though, right? She was probably just frustrated. I realized then that Fiona had been dealing with our mother's toxic behavior for so long that she'd normalized it. She couldn't see how wrong it was because she'd been trained to accept it as just how Mom is. But I didn't have to accept it. I didn't have to let my mother treat us badly just because she was family. I didn't have to sacrifice my son's well-being and my own sanity to maintain a relationship with someone who admitted she was hurting us on purpose. The next week was blissfully peaceful. Kai's routines went undisturbed. Our bathroom was available when we needed it. Our supplies stayed where we left them. No one criticized my appearance or my housekeeping or my parenting. No one made cruel comments about my life or my choices. Kai noticed the difference immediately. Grandma's not coming this week, he asked on Friday afternoon. No, buddy. Grandma's not coming this week. Good, he said simply, and went back to his tablet. Even at 8 years old, he had recognized that her visits were stressful and disruptive. He was relieved to have his safe space back. My mother called the following week, acting like nothing had happened. I'll be there Friday around 4, she said. No, you won't, I replied. We talked about this. You're not welcome here anymore. Don't be silly. You were just having a bad day. I forgive you. She forgave me. For setting boundaries in my own home. For protecting my child from her toxic behavior. For refusing to let her hit me. Mom, I meant what I said. You can't come here anymore. You can see Kai at family gatherings or neutral locations, but you can't use my apartment as your personal hotel. You can't keep my grandson away from me. I'm not keeping him away from you. I'm keeping you away from our home. There's a difference. She hung up on me. For the next month, she tried everything. She called crying, saying she missed us. She called angry, saying I was ungrateful and selfish. She had Fiona call to guilt trip me. She even had Douglas call, which was surreal since I hadn't spoken to him in 15 years. Your mother just wants to spend time with her family, he said in his smooth, manipulative voice. Surely you can work something out. My mother wants to use my apartment as a free hotel, I replied. If she wants to spend time with us, she can do it somewhere else. I held firm. For the first time in my adult life, I maintained a boundary with my mother despite all her attempts to bulldoze through it. The peace in our home was incredible. Kai's behavior improved dramatically without the constant weekend disruptions. His sleep got better, his appetite improved, and he started laughing more. I didn't realize how much stress we'd both been carrying until it was gone. My own health started improving too. Without the constant criticism and conflict, my depression lifted somewhat. I was sleeping better, eating better, and I even started taking better care of my appearance, not because my mother had shamed me into it, but because I felt better about myself. But the real victory came when Fiona called me in October with news about our mother and Douglas. They broke up, she said. Apparently, Douglas was seeing someone else the whole time. Mom found out when the other woman posted pictures of them together on social media. I felt a moment of sadness for my mother, but not surprise. This was exactly what Douglas had done to her 20 years ago. He hadn't changed at all. Is she okay? I asked. She's devastated. She keeps saying she can't believe she fell for his lies again. She's been crying for days. Part of me wanted to reach out, to comfort her, to be the supportive daughter I'd always tried to be. But then I remembered her words. I already knew. She had known she was hurting us, and she had chosen to do it anyway for the convenience of getting ready at my place for dates with a man who was betraying her. She had sacrificed her relationship with her daughter and grandson for a man who didn't even respect her enough to be faithful. She had destroyed her family for someone who was using her just like she had been using us. The irony was devastating and perfect. My mother tried to reconcile after Douglas left her again. She called, apologizing and saying she'd made mistakes. But her apologies were hollow, focused on her own pain rather than the damage she'd done to us. I was just so excited about Douglas, she said. I wasn't thinking clearly. Surely you can understand that. But I didn't understand it, and I didn't have to. Being excited about a relationship didn't excuse months of abusive behavior toward your own family. Being heartbroken didn't undo the damage you'd caused when you admitted you knew you were hurting people and chose to keep doing it anyway. Mom, when I confronted you about all the ways you were hurting us, you said you already knew. You admitted that you knew you were making our lives harder, and you chose to keep doing it because it was convenient for you. That's not a mistake. That's a choice. I was upset that day. I didn't mean it. Yes, you did. You meant it, and we both know it. You chose Douglas over your own family, and you chose your convenience over our well-being. Those weren't accidents. She started crying then, the manipulative tears that had worked on me for decades. I need my family now. Douglas is gone, and I have nobody. You had family, I said quietly. You had a daughter who worked 2 jobs and still made time for you. You had a grandson who loved spending time with his grandma. You chose to throw that away for a man who abandoned you before and abandoned you again. People make mistakes, Juniper. You're supposed to forgive family. I'm supposed to protect my child, Mom. And that includes protecting him from people who hurt him, even if they're family. That was our last real conversation. She still calls sometimes, leaving voicemails about how much she misses Kai and how family should stick together. But she never acknowledges what she did wrong. She never takes responsibility for her choices. She never apologizes for the months of abuse and boundary violations. She just wants things to go back to the way they were, where she could take whatever she wanted from us and we'd accept it because that's what family does. But that's not what family does. Family respects each other. Family considers each other's needs. Family doesn't knowingly hurt each other for their own convenience. Kai and I are thriving now. Our little apartment is peaceful and safe. His routines are stable, his supplies are protected, and no one criticizes him for being exactly who he is. We have our struggles, but we face them together without anyone making them worse on purpose. I've learned that you can't love someone into treating you better. You can't sacrifice enough or accommodate enough or forgive enough to make a toxic person change their behavior. Sometimes, the most loving thing you can do for yourself and your child is to walk away from people who admit they're hurting you and choose to keep doing it anyway. My mother made her choice when she prioritized her convenience over our well-being. She made it again when she chose a man who had already proven he couldn't be trusted over the family who had always been there for her. And she made it a third time when she refused to take responsibility for the damage she'd caused. I've made my choice too. I choose my son's peace over my mother's demands. I choose our stability over her chaos. I choose protecting the family I've built over maintaining a relationship with someone who sees us as resources to be used rather than people to be loved. Some people say I'm being too harsh, that families should forgive each other no matter what. But those people have never had to choose between their child's well-being and their mother's entitlement. They've never had to explain to their 8-year-old why grandma makes him feel scared and anxious in his own home. They've never had someone look them in the eye and say, I already knew, when confronted about months of deliberate cruelty. I know my mother is alone now, and part of me feels sad about that. But she's not alone because I'm cruel or unforgiving. She's alone because she chose to treat the people who loved her as disposable conveniences. She's alone because she burned down her relationships for a man who never loved her at all. And maybe, in some small way, being alone will teach her what I could never teach her with words, that actions have consequences, that love requires respect, and that family isn't about what you can take from each other, it's about what you're willing to give. As for Kai and me, we're building something new. Something based on mutual respect and genuine care. Something where everyone's needs matter and everyone's boundaries are honored. Something where love isn't conditional on how much abuse you're willing to accept. My mother taught me many things over the years, both good and bad. But the most important lesson she gave me was this: sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is walk away from someone who refuses to treat you with basic human decency, even if that someone gave birth to you. She wanted to own my apartment, to treat it as her personal space where she could do whatever she wanted without consequence. But she never understood that respect isn't something you inherit, it's something you earn. And once you lose it through your own choices, you can't demand it back just because you're family. Today, as I sit in my peaceful kitchen while my son sleeps soundly in his own room, I know I made the right choice. We're safe, we're stable, and we're surrounded only by people who genuinely care about our well-being. My mother thought she had the right to my apartment, but she was wrong. The only rights she had were the ones I gave her, and she lost those the moment she admitted she was hurting us on purpose. Some bridges are meant to be burned, especially when crossing them means sacrificing the people you're supposed to protect most.